Okay, I'm just gonna say it. It seems like it is just every software engineer's canon event at this point to make a laid off YouTube video. So here's my story. I was laid off actually more than 3 years ago at this point. So I spent a year and a half exploring, learning, experimenting, and I almost like didn't make this video. I didn't want to talk about it, at least in like a public sense. I feel like the videos that I see on YouTube about people that made a huge career pivot, they tend to speak from a place of success. So they usually are now millionaires or founders or something. And I spent a whole year experimenting, made nowhere near what I was making. And I just felt, honestly, a little bit like a failure. I didn't feel like it was valuable to anyone out there. But I think it is valuable. I had 3 months severance, which is pretty good. I stretched that out, obviously, but I remember I gave myself 3 months of time to experiment. I'm not gonna apply to jobs. I'm not going to do the whole like, I'm not gonna like leak code, do all this stuff. I'm gonna give myself time to just follow whatever curiosities I have and just run with it. I knew I liked to dance. I wasn't gonna be a professional dancer, but I wanted to just keep taking classes and see what would happen. And in the beginner classes, I noticed that I was helping newcomers, beginners, kind of on their journey. And I eventually was able to teach a weekly slot at my home studio, which was great. I've never done that before. I could spend so much time being creative, and it was great. This climbing gym that I went to had this little yoga room, and it was just this empty room with like one mirror. The mirror, it wasn't like a dance studio at all. It was just like one mirror that I think the manager used for personal use. But I then saw a flyer that said that they were gonna have some sort of salsa beginner like kind of class there. I went to the front desk, and I don't know what came over me, but I was like, hey, I noticed you're teaching, I noticed you guys have this class. Can I also teach a like grooves kind of like beginner friendly class? And I remember the front desk person was like, huh? Like this is not how people apply to jobs. But they were like, yeah, we actually don't have a class like that. Like maybe I can like connect you to the manager or somebody, and we can kind of set that up. And within, like a couple weeks, I started teaching there, just like random pop-ups, and then I think I was eventually even like teaching it on like a bi-weekly schedule, which was great. What that really taught me was that you can create a job. Like this was my first time getting a taste of you can find a place that has some sort of gap. Like they had a room that was empty, and I had an idea of how to fill that space with value, and they were down for it. And that was the first time I think I really set this fire under me. It was a small fire, very small fire, but it instilled in me this belief that I could create my own value in places that didn't yet like see it, I guess. So that kind of led me to then look up different studios that weren't traditionally like the hip hop choreography like studios. I found a studio that I thought had a really great message and didn't have any choreography classes at all. And I messaged them. They weren't even looking. I don't even remember if they had like a formal position open. But I emailed them and I was like, hey, here's like a sample video of what I've done, because now I've taught like a couple classes in my home studio and also now at this climbing gym. And I sent them a clip. They were like, hey, come in, we want you to teach some of the staff and see what your teaching style is like. And then I got that. Fast forward a little bit, I taught there for a year weekly, and I built a whole like set of regulars, and that was amazing. That was something that I just didn't know that I could do. Okay, so now the math hit. I could not do this and sustain a living. This was all part-time work. These were all barely, people were doing this on top of their full-time jobs. So for me, I started then wondering, okay, I can apply the same mentality of finding work and finding sort of gaps, but apply it to skills that I think are more valuable. So I obviously have had at this point like 7 years in the industry of like building software. Started looking for the intersection, and I just remember looking online, like what are apps or what are something software that has to do with dance. And I came across a company, I'm not sure if it's still around, but it was really small. They didn't have again, no job openings, but just like a cool product that just was based around community planning events for dancers. And I just emailed, I think I just reached out on LinkedIn or something, I don't know what I did, but I reached out, I was like, hey, love your product, can I help? It was literally just like a company of 2 guys and the VP of tech, because you know, you're either that or something else. He got back to me and was like, yeah, do you want to build this tiny feature? I'm doing this. This is what we're working on now. And I was like, okay. And they paid me like, I think like $1,500 to build this one small thing. And that like added like to my fire of, okay, I can add value to things that I choose, not just like, you know, sign on to some corporate job. And that was great, but it didn't last very long. Then I realized there was at least some sort of intersection between software and dance. And a few more connections later, I met someone who was building their own platform for dancers. It didn't work out completely. However, they did fly me out to LA, and I met a bunch of passionate creatives, business owners, people just in the space. And that's where I met my future business partner. And from then on, here was like the real like bulk of the year. We met, and I remember just being like, hey, I kind of have this idea of this like app for dancers. And she was like, you know what, I got some time. I also love that. Obviously we're in a room full of other dancers, and she's also a dancer. She was like, yeah, you know, if you need some help with that, like I'd love to help you. And the next day, you know, after we got back home, we texted each other and we were like, was this real? Did you mean that? And we're both women of our words. So we spent the next year, along with another friend of mine, 3 of us, spent the next year trying to build this app. And this is where we learned the most. We failed the most. And we pivoted so much from just the product, we went back from like, do we want B2C, B2B, we did all these things. I'm not gonna get into the details of it, but the point is, I really felt like such a failure because we spent a year and we made money, but not even doing the thing we were supposed to do. We made money selling t-shirts that was promoting this thing. And at one point, someone literally went up to me and was like, oh my God, you started a fashion brand. And we're like, no, we didn't. That was not the intention of this. But again, we were like, it's all part of the process. I really wish that I wasn't as hard on myself, because honestly, like business, the first 3 businesses you fail or something like that, 9 out of 10, I don't know, whatever the statistic is, you will fail a lot more than you succeed. And that's okay, because that's all part of the learning process. And the point is to learn, and you're going to learn a lot more doing this than at any job. Towards the end of the year, I did start feeling the pressure of like finances, so I did have to start looking for a job. However, I will say the last lesson that this layoff period gave me was that you don't have to just go back to some like soul-sucking job. You can be a very like discerned critic of looking for a job, and you can look for a job that works for you in a way. So I remember when I was looking for a job at this point, I did the same thing. It wasn't through any sort of like formal job like applicant. I emailed them and I said, hey, I like this product, and it's, you know, it's relevant to the dance studio space. I care about that. And do you want to hire me for some part-time work or something? And they're like, we don't do part-time, but if you know, ever want like a full-time thing, like come back. And at this point I was so stressed for money that I couldn't even think creatively anymore. And so I knew I needed to find a job, and I knew I needed to find a job that would make me a better person doing the things that I want to do. So I knew that I wanted to learn about the space. I knew I wanted to continue at least, you know, learning about the industry, even if it's not forever. Just like, this was my next step. I wanted to be able to learn about the studio space. So I'm not going to name names here, but yeah. So then now I'm working full-time at a company that I get to learn about the industry, and I get to get paid basically to enhance my skills, so that if I ever were to get laid off again, I would be excited. I would be so excited because now I know that you can apply this mentality everywhere. I actually caught up with my business partner from the last year that we were doing this project together, and we were kind of laughing because we were like, you know what, like, we both have jobs in corporate, but like, we wouldn't have even gotten this job if we had not spent that year learning everything we learned, because we had so much to talk about in the interview. If I had stayed a year in the job before this, I don't even know what I could talk about, because I didn't care about the product. I didn't really know what I was doing the last few months I was there. Honestly, probably should have been let go earlier, but I didn't ask any of the right questions because I wasn't interested in it. And like, but this last year when we were talking, we both were passionate about the space, the users. We did so many customer interviews. I learned a whole bunch of tech just to be able to ship this thing out, launch it on the stores. You know, we learned graphic design. We learned so many things because we were passionate about the space. And then we had so much to talk about when we had interviews. So even if your goal isn't to like leave corporate forever and to, you know, go start a farm somewhere, like, even if you get laid off and you really didn't want to, I guarantee that if you follow your passions and you just kind of like follow something that makes you really try, and like, you don't mind learning about things, like, this will take you further than trying to force something at a place that you're not really interested in. So yeah. And then I also was working at a donut shop because I was like, well, here's something else I'm interested in, and here's something else I kind of want to learn about. I want to learn about how a small, you know, bakery-ish kind of business is run. And that was great. I just, that's another video. Anyway, obviously I'm speaking from a tremendous place of privilege here, because my layoff, I had severance, and I also had to dig into my savings, but at least I had savings. These are tough times, but if you want to take a break from work, if you are laid off and you do have a bit of runway, I just encourage you to use this time to explore every little thing that you are passionate about. Give yourself a little bit of an experiment time box and just see where it goes. Because like, I don't think I would have been able to predict any of the doors that were open to me after just a few months of just like experimenting. So